All right, number 40, Every Student Succeeds Act. So this starts on page 26 and will take us all the way through 27. So the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, took full effect in 2018 to replace the No Child Left Behind Act in modifying the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA. If updates are provided by the California Department of Education, the following notice may change and new information may be added. First, information regarding professional qualifications of teachers, paraprofessionals, and aides. Oops. Um, Upon request, parents have a right to information regarding the professional qualification of their students' classrooms, teachers, paraprofessionals, and aides. This includes whether the teacher meets the state qualification and licensing criteria for the grades and subjects they teach, whether the teacher is teaching under an emergency permit or other provisional status because of special circumstances, the major or field of discipline for any degrees or certifications held by the teacher, and whether any instructional aides or paraprofessionals provide services to the parents' child, and if so, their qualifications. In addition, parents have a right to notice when the parent's child has been taught for 4 or more weeks by a teacher who is not highly qualified. And then there's the statutes for that. So basically, as a parent, you have the right to request information regarding what your child's teachers, did they go to college? Obviously, they did, but if so, what did they study? What's the highest degree do they hold? Do they have a bachelor's or do they have a master's as well? Same for any teaching aides or paraprofessionals. So you have a right to know that. Information regarding individual student reports on statewide assessments. Upon request, parents have a right to information on the level of achievement of their student on every state academic assessment administered to the student. There's a statute. So basically, what that says is your student will get a score. And so the big score is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your everything from your basic in their approaching, and then proficient, and then exceptional or beyond proficient, or whatever they say. And then within those are individual scores, and then they break down how, say in math, how'd they do on addition, how'd they do on subtraction, how'd they do on fractions, how'd they do on decimals, how'd they do on this, that, the other. And you have a right as a parent to know how they scored on that statewide assessment. School identified for school improvement. A local educational agency shall promptly provide notice to a parent or parents of each school or each student enrolled in an elementary school or secondary school identified for school improvement. And that is a school that fails for 2 consecutive years to make adequate yearly progress as defined in the state's plan. For comprehensive support and improvement activities or targeted support and improvement activities. The notice will be in an understandable and uniform format, and to the extent practicable, in a language that parents can understand. The notice will include an explanation of what the identification means, how the school compares in terms of academic achievement to other elementary schools or secondary schools served by the local educational agency and the state educational agency, the reasons for the identification, an explanation of what the school identified for school improvement is doing to address the problem of low achievement, an explanation of what the local educational agency or state educational agency is doing to help the school address the achievement problem, an explanation of how parents can become involved in addressing the academic issues that cause the school to be identified for school improvement, and an explanation of the parents' option to transfer their child to another public school, with transportation provided by the agency when required, or to obtain supplemental educational services for the child. There's the statutes for that. So, all right, so that's a lot. So basically, what happens is when the kids take their state test at the end of the year, they have certain goals they have to meet. And if they don't meet those goals for 2 years in a row, then they are going to be labeled as a school in need of improvement. And what that is telling you as a parent, you have a right to know that. You have a right to know why it was put that way. And you have a right to know what the school is doing to remedy that situation. So they may be doing different trainings, they may take a different approach. There's all sorts of things that could be going on. Um, and then if you decide I'm not having any faith in my local school, I want my student to go somewhere else, then you can say, I want to send my child to a different school. And then it talks about public transportation. And I'm not exactly sure what that last part meant. And also if it's seen for improvement and a parent comes up and says, well, what can I do to help? Um, they've got to be told what they can do to help. So, all right. So parent and family engagement. ESSA requires the district to notify parents of written parent and family engagement policy. And there's your state statute for it, not state statute, federal statute. The policy must include how each school will convene an annual meeting to which all parents of participating students shall be invited and encouraged to attend, to inform parents of the requirements of this policy and the right of parents to be involved, offer a flexible number of meetings, involve parents in an organized and timely manner in the review and development of programs under this part, including development of the parent and family engagement policy. Provide parents timely notice about programs under this part, a description of the curriculum in use at the school, the forms of academic achievement, and if requested by parents, opportunity for regular meetings to formulate suggestions and participate in decisions related to the education of their children. Allow parents to submit comments on the plan when the school makes it public. Jointly developed a compact with parents describing the school's responsibility to provide high quality curriculum in a supportive and effective learning environment, and addresses the importance of communication between parents and teachers. Provide assistance to parents of children served by the school in understanding academic standards, assessments, and the requirements of this part. Provide materials and training to help parents work with their children to improve their children's children's achievement. Educate teachers on the importance of parent outreach and communication, coordinate parent involvement in school programs, provide information related to school and parent programs in a format and language the parents can understand, adopt and implement model approaches to improving parental involvement, and provide other reasonable support for parental involvement activities as parents may request. This policy shall be provided in a format and, to the extent practicable, in a language that parents will understand. Woo! ELA teachers, you've got lots of forgiving to do on this. All right, here we go. So, basically, what it's saying is schools are required to give parents the opportunity to come over and engage in the school. So I can tell you at Cesar Chavez Junior High School, they have the coffee and dinner with the principals. They have it at a variety of times. And these topics include things. So there's a few I've not been too interested in, so I don't go to them. I'm more interested in curriculums. I'm more interested in discipline. So I went to hear about the discipline system they use at the school, and at the same time, I was able to address my concerns with it. Were they heard? I don't think so. Um, And so the flexible number of meetings, that's what it means, is like the different times. Um, Now, many of the elementary schools will have what's called a parent teacher organization or parent teacher association. And that's what this is talking about. Schools have to let these organizations of parents come in and work with them, and honestly, schools love them. So I mean, it's a law that's easy to follow. Then they talk about the compact with parents. Now, I've never seen parents be directly involved, but what they'll do is it's like a contract, and I've seen those given out at things like parent teacher conferences or orientations. I've not seen them done here, um, at least at the school my son goes to. Educate teachers on the importance of parent outreach and communication. I'm not sure what's going on in that part because I'm a parent, I'm not a teacher. Um, so then they've got to coordinate parent involvement in school programs, provide information related to those programs, and make sure that those parents can read. And if it's practical, make sure it's in a language that's understandable. Sometimes there's really obscure languages and it's not possible. And then let's look at our last one, and that is limited English proficient students. Sometimes we call them ELLs or ESLs, English language learners, or English as a second language. It doesn't necessarily mean Spanish, it's just anyone who does not have a full understanding of the English language. Um, So ESSA requires notice be given to parents of limited English proficient students regarding limited English proficiency programs not later than 30 days after the beginning of the school year, or for students identified later in the school year within 2 weeks. Notice includes the reasons for the identification of the student as limited English proficient, the need for placement in a language instructional education program, the student's level of English proficiency and how such a level was assessed, the status of the student's academic achievement, the methods of instruction used in the available programs, including content, instructional goals, and the use of English and native language, the exit requirements for the program, how the program meets the objectives of the student's IEP, if applicable, and parent options for removing a student from a program, declining initial enrollment. Sorry. and or choosing another program, and there's your statutes. In addition, the notice shall include the following. 1. Whether the student is a long-term English learner or at risk of becoming a long-term English learner. 2. The manner in which the program will meet the needs of long-term English learners or those at risk of becoming long-term English learners. And 3, the manner in which the program will help long-term English learners or those at risk of becoming long-term English learners develop English proficiency and meet age-appropriate academic standards. And there's your state statutes. So basically what this is saying is if your student, so maybe your child's teacher says, oh, I'm not sure if the child understands English, I'm going to refer this child to limited English services. So now if they are identified before the school year begins, or like maybe during the summer, or they were that way last year, then they are to be in a program no later than 30 days after the beginning of the school year. Now, sometimes students slip through the cracks. It happens. I know, sad but true. And so that student would have 2 weeks to get started. So let's say the student looked fine in the summer, but maybe around October we saw some faltering. November, it just was unavoidable. And so right before Thanksgiving, this teacher decides, yeah, we got to refer. And then within that 2 weeks, that child's got to be in there. And I know that wasn't the best example with Thanksgiving, but sometimes it just takes a little while. Sometimes it's a transfer student, a student transfers from another district and maybe they didn't see that. So there's that. And so if that student is seen needing that program, those parents are going to get a notice, and they're going to tell you in that note why that student was referred, why that student needs to be placed in that program, what that student's level of proficiency is, and how they got to that. So you have a right to know all those things. You also have a right to know what their academic achievement is. So you may say, well, maybe their English is just a little off, but you know what? They're making straight A's. Or you may find out, well, their grades aren't that great. They may need that support. So, it's just however they get to it. And then they also have to tell you what instruction methods they're going to use. Are they going to have them read? Are they going to have them listen? Is it on a computer, pencil, or paper? And again, you have the right to look at any curriculum you want to look at as a parent. And then they've got to tell you what the exit requirements. So how do I get out of this? Well, you've got to do A, B, C, and D to this level. And it's got to be very clear. And then they've also got to tell how the program meets the objectives so if a student has an IEP or whatever, how is it going to meet their needs? And then as a parent, you also have the right to remove a student from the English language program, or you can decline the initial enrollment. So the school says, we'd like to put them in ESL class. You could say, no, I don't want that. And there's lots of reasons parents don't want that. And so your reason as a parent is your reason. And you might want to discuss it, and maybe you tell them your reason and they say, oh, I understand that concern, but here's how we're going to alleviate that. So you might, it does not hurt to be open and honest with your school. And then, because they're on your team. And then 3, the manner in which the program will help the English language learner. And then they say those at becoming risk. So I'll give you an example. So when I was in Peace Corps, I learned a second language and I got pretty good at it because it was all I was speaking. I started learning how to think in it. But now that I'm back home and I've not spoken it for forever, I don't know it. And that's what kind of happens to a lot of English language learners. They get home, they get out of school, they really don't have any exposure to English. So they're fine at school, but then they kind of lose the skills because they're not practicing at home. So that's why that is put in there. All right. The information provided above is available upon request from each of the students' schools, or you can go to the district office. Additional notices that may be required shall be sent separately, and there are the statutes. Whew, that was a lot.